If you could go back in time for a day to witness a historic event, which would you choose? Story 1. I would love to see the debut of a Molière play at Versailles. Story 2. I have always wanted to go back in time to somewhere around 4500 BC and just record the languages being spoken around the world. There are entire fields of research that deconstruct proto-languages of the languages we speak, but those can only go so far back and don't account for all the other languages that got abandoned over time. The only hard part would be choosing how far back in time to go, because humans have speaking languages for a very, very long time. Story 3. I'd like to see Tenochtitlan before the Spanish destroyed it. Story 4. As a geologist, the Lake Agassiz flood. During the last glacial period over 12,000 years ago, there was a massive lake in the middle of the North American continent fed by glacial meltwater. This lake is now known as Lake Agassiz. At its peak, the lake was larger than all of the current Great Lakes combined. Estimates put it at 440,000 square kilometers in area. Most of that water was held in place by glacial and topographic dams. At the end of the last ice age, the largest ice body containing the lake to the east in Hudson Bay retreated, melted, causing the lake to drain almost completely in less than 9 months. A freshwater lake with tens of thousands of years of history and input, and more fresh water than all other freshwater bodies on the planet at that time combined, drained in less than a year. The flooding was likely unprecedented, carrying erratics, boulders, the size of small houses hundreds of miles away. As the water drained into Hudson Bay and other outlets, the global sea level rose by 3 meters. Lake Winnipeg, Lake Manitoba, Red Lake, and Lake of the Woods are the largest remnants of Lake Agassiz. Story 5. Would love to see and hear dinosaurs roaming around our land. Story 6. For a long time, the Mediterranean Sea was cut off from the Atlantic Ocean, and the rivers flowing into it were not enough to prevent it drying up completely. At some point in time, the ocean was able to cut an opening at Gibraltar, and millions of cubic meters of water poured into the basin. That I would like to have seen. Story 7. I don't know if this answer counts as it's not historic in the terms of a specific event, but I'd love to see early humans and how their lives were. I'd love to witness a hunt and see how they survive, what their early community life was like, what they really looked like. I am curious to know what their teeth looked like pre-farming, how their bodies looked when food was scarce, but they did a ton of walking, and really how they walked without shoes. After writing this out, I'd like to see Otzi the Iceman's last day. Scientists know almost everything they can about his last few days on Earth, but not who he was or why he was murdered. It would be interesting to see the answer to those questions. Story 8. Visible to the naked eye, Kepler's star was brighter at its peak than any other star in the night sky, with an apparent magnitude of 2.5. It was visible during the day for over 3 weeks. Records of its sighting exist in European, Chinese, Korean, and Arabic sources. Story 9. Diogenes telling Alexander the Great to step out of his sunlight. Story 10. When the Golden Gate Bridge was finished, my father was one of the first to walk across it. He died when I was 8. Would love to see him again. Story 11. The winged hussars charge. It was so impressive that a battle nearby stopped just to watch them charge. Story 12. A tour of Library of Alexandria before it was destroyed. Story 13. I'd watch Reactor 4 explode from very far away, and maybe in a special suit. Story 15. The premiere of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in Vienna. Story 16. The Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066. Story 17. See the asteroid comet that took out the dinosaurs from a safe distance. Story 18. The building of the pyramid story. 19. Does seeing the dinosaurs count? Story 20. Whitechapel, 1888. Finally see who Jack the Ripper was. Story 21. Roswell, New Mexico, June 1947. Let's see what really crashed out there. Story 22. May 1st, 1851. The opening of the Crystal Palace exhibition in London. Story 23. I've always just really wanted to know what Anne Boleyn looked like. I would just want to spend a normal day with her or something. LOL. Story 24. I would go back to a time long before people existed, just to experience what the air smelled like. Story 26. Queen, 1985 Live Aid. Freddie died before I was even born, so even if I could just see him perform live anywhere, any time would be such a dream come true. Story 27, January 13th, 2007. I'll be on the patio outside my kitchen in Brussels. I will find out once and for all if she actually locked the door when we left for Rome as she claims. To see if that burglar chose our apartment out of all the others to use their lock-picking skills to enter and steal all my CDs. Or she didn't, and a burglar who tries to see if doors are locked or not found ours. Story 28. The day Archimedes was killed. I'd stop that MF story 29. This isn't historic for anyone but my family. October 27th, 2018. I was in Colorado celebrating Halloween. My younger siblings in Texas were at a party. One of my sisters, 15, left the party with an older boy, both drunk. The older boy was driving and he ran off the road and hit a tree. Older boy broke his back but lived. My sister died instantly. I'd go back in time, stay sober, park down the road, and wait for my siblings to need a ride and drive them home. Story 30. The Crucifixion of Jesus. I am not Christian or religious. I am just curious about a man that changed the world. Or maybe the resurrection day would be better. Did he really come back? How many witnesses were actually there? During orientation week at a Catholic university, they asked if you could have dinner with anyone living or dead, who would it be? I said Jesus, and everyone was so impressed and thinking I should have said that. But, as an atheist at a Catholic university, I had a very different agenda. Story 31, December 7th, 1941. So I could sit with my dad on the hill overlooking Honolulu and see it through his eyes, and hug my grandmother before she went to work as a nurse and didn't come home for 2 days, taking care of overflow patients from Tripler Hospital. Story 32. The Battle of Lexington and Concord. I want to know if Han fired first. Story 33. My biological parents' wedding. It would be so interesting to see a couple I've only know as being divorced being in love. They shouldn't be together, but it would be fascinating to see the emotions behind where my brother and I came from. Story 34. Queen at Live Aid in 1985. From the footage you can tell it was an amazing event, but to be there and experience it must have been something else. Story 35. I would go back to Monday the 5th of August in 1996 to spend a day with my father. He passed on to the 7th of August that week. I want a day with him to ask questions, get a hug, and to express my appreciation of him. He was my best friend and was the only person who seemed to understand me and respect me.